All right. Hello and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on communication competence. My name is Mackenzie Keller with the CSD Pool, and I'm joined by CPS HR consultant Wendy Farrell. Wendy has over 14 years of experience teaching management skills to both public and private sector organizations, so we're very excited to have her with us today. This webinar will teach you how to understand the variety of skills involved in communication, how to understand what is needed for you to produce positive outcomes when communicating, and how to communicate with clarity. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, you can put them in the chat so that our presenter can see them, and we'll also have some additional time for questions at the end. This webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be distributed sometime later today. So if you have to step away for whatever reason, or if there's a part of it you'd like to go back to and watch again, you will have that opportunity. That just about covers the housekeeping stuff. So, Wendy, I will turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Mackenzie. Welcome, everyone. Love seeing so many people interested in communication competence. It's a wide skill set, and it has many sub skill sets. So we'll touch upon skills in all areas of communication today and give you kind of a quick overview, some strategies to apply, some things to think about. I always like to encourage people as we're chatting, as you're learning, as you're listening, seeing things on the screen, start writing down your favorite key takeaways, things that are resonating with you, because that helps you on the harder part of the journey. I always say it's all fun and games during class, but afterwards, when you want to start integrating these things into your relatively set communication habits, that's the harder part. So start a list of things you want to remember to start doing, to course correct as you're communicating with others, and remember something that you learned that resonated, that might shift, change the outcome of your conversation, and start to shift your habits. All right, so let's get started. So communication is the opportunity, that intersection between two minds. So what's up here and what's up here? And we have a variety of ways to communicate what is going on in our minds through speaking, through emailing, through texting, and the variety of ways we communicate even grows daily, social media and such. And it's important for you to be good at all parts of that, because sometimes you are the speaker who's articulating a message, typing it or speaking it, and sometimes you are the receiver who is listening and interpreting that email. And you want to have your most open mindset, your most aware mindset as you approach conversation. And when I say conversation, I am including email and text exchange, that communication. And the goal, the outcome we are looking for, is that both people, or the group of people that you're communicating with, understand approximately the same thing. Because remember, we all perceive things in different ways. So what you decided to package up and say to somebody else or type to somebody else from what you are considering and thinking can easily be, and most likely it will be, misperceived or misinterpreted, or only partially understood as you intended it. So the goal is, one of the main goals is clarity, is seeking that clarity and making sure that the other person received your message in the way that you intended, and that after it, you are actually both on the same page. And we need some sort of proof that that actually occurred beyond saying, okay, are we clear? What are we clear about? So that's what we're trying to do here. And in this short webinar, these are the skill sets that I chose to focus on. There are more, but let's focus on these. Establishing rapport, being able to facilitate good conversation is a skill set. And if at least one of you is competent in that area, it's more likely the conversation is going to yield positive results. Speech filtering is filtering whatever comes into your mind, whatever you start to think, and then filtering it before it comes out your mouth or out your fingertips as you type. Thinking about your audience, thinking about the goal that you have, and not just going with whatever initially or reactionary type of thought came into your mind. Of course, listening, you probably have all heard about active listening. I'm going to give you some reminders today, but it probably is one of the most important parts of your competence in communication. And then we will also focus on writing. I'd like to also say that you are likely partial to one style of communication over the other. You might be a verbal communicator who likes to communicate on the phone or on a Zoom where you're talking out loud. You might be a prefer written communication and you'd rather email and or text. So nothing wrong with that. It's kind of how you're hardwired, what your preference is, what you're used to, but that doesn't mean you don't need to be good at all of the ways that we communicate. So understand where your preferences are and then which areas you want to build skill in. So what is rapport? Rapport is your ability to help people feel at ease and comfortable around you as quickly as possible. If you can do that, it's easier to get down to business. It's easier to get down to whatever it is you're communicating. If people are uncomfortable, they may be less willing to proffer up information or participate in a conversation. So your rapport skills are really your way of easing people into that communication. And it could be the first time you're communicating with someone, or it's especially important to establish some rapport. That's your, first contact, right? And the impressions start to form there. But you want to establish rapport in emails that you exchange with people that you do know, or in conversations where you're getting together with people that you do know. Let's help people feel at ease and comfortable before we get on to what we need to talk about. Things that you can do to build your rapport skills. Introduce yourself first. Don't wait to be introduced. Don't wait till someone else introduces you. Not that that's wrong, but just jump in. Hi, I'm Wendy. Nice to meet you. That's a great way to establish rapport, help people feel a smidge more comfortable. Watch your nonverbals always. This is really a huge part of communication competence that I'm not going to touch upon in depth today, but I really want you to be aware. Our body language and our nonverbals are giving off quite a bit of message beyond the words that we're using. So we want to be aware of those and make sure they're in alignment with the message we're trying to get across. So to help your rapport, you want to exhibit engaging nonverbals and body language. So instead of slouching and looking like you don't care, stand up straight, lean in, make eye contact, smile, give a firm handshake. Just show somehow with your body language and nonverbals that you are interested. If you're an arm crosser, uncross your arms. Yes, it could be cold. Yes, it could be comfortable, but it also kind of says I'm pretty closed off to you in this conversation, or I don't agree with you, and you aren't looking to be misperceived. I think I say it somewhere towards the end of this, but I always like to remind people or encourage people to walk around expecting to be misperceived and misunderstood. Because if you do expect it, I think you make greater effort to make sure your conversation was received with that clarity, and any misperception or misunderstanding is cleared up before the end of that conversation. You can combine combine a compliment with a question. Oh, I love that band t-shirt. Have you seen them live? And that starts a little conversation, right? And always helpful, especially to remember names, but to help people feel like you're paying attention and you're focused, is to say their name as you converse. So when you say, hi, I'm Wendy, and they say, hello, I'm Joe. Hey, Joe, it's really nice to meet you. That always helps me saying it 2 or 3 or 4 times in my brain to help me remember names. So those are just some things that you can do. So maybe write down one of them that you want to start to try to remember to do. And this rapport can be established in emails. Some emails, yeah, you can get right down to business. But if it's a fresh email and you talk to somebody maybe in a few days or a week or ever, start with a couple of lines of rapport. Hello, how you doing? Hope your week is getting off to a nice start. Just something that isn't right into business. It kind of gives a different tone. So remember that these things really integrate into your writing as well. Then the skill of facilitating conversation is a skill in and of itself. Yeah, you want to be a great listener. Yes, you want to articulate your message clearly, distinctly, professionally. How do you facilitate effective conversations? To me, an effective conversation, whether it's in writing or in verbal, yields the result you wanted from that conversation. You achieved the outcome, which is a very important part of communication competence. What do you want to achieve from this conversation? What outcome, small or large, do you want? And understanding that before you head into the conversation really helps you keep that conversation moving towards that outcome. And that is the work of the facilitating of that conversation. So start by being interested. I always like to say that, I enjoy talking to interesting people, but I really enjoy talking to interested people who seem to be interested in this conversation, interested in me, interested in what I do, interested in what I'm talking about. Often people say, oh, hey, yeah, what do you do? Oh, I'm this, that. Oh, okay, well, I do this, that, and the other. It's like, okay, you're kind of just waiting for your turn to talk as opposed to demonstrating some interest, like maybe asking me some follow-up questions. And so that's what being interested looks like, paying attention, being focused, asking more questions. When it's your turn to talk, ask more questions, encourage them to talk. And while you're doing that, ask some great open-ended questions. Open-ended questions are can help you generate good conversations. They aren't closed-ended questions. Usually can't be answered by a yes, a no, or a one word. Do you like your job? Yes, no. What's your favorite part of your work? A whole different question that can absolutely, first of all, leaning in for someone to lean in to say, what is my favorite part of my job, right? I love questions like that make you think, that's a great question. Let me think about my answer. And really can generate a much more interesting conversation than a closed-end question like, do you like your job? Ask for their thoughts. What are your ideas? What are your perspectives on this, that? And really listen to them. Maybe acknowledge them. Again, you don't have to agree with someone's perspective to fully listen to it, to acknowledge it, to understand it. You don't have to respond by saying, I agree, but you also don't have to respond by saying, I disagree with you. You could just say, hey, thanks for sharing. I hadn't thought of it that way before. And really not only ask for their ideas, but be receptive and open-minded, because that's when you learn things. It's helpful to learn other perspectives, especially the ones you don't agree with. That adds to your perspective and it gives you a broader perspective at whatever it is you're looking at. That makes you more strategic, makes you more able to understand other people. One of the largest challenges people tell me they have with communication is just the ability to understand so many different personality types. And yeah, that's challenging. So you have to kind of make a plan to understand other people. And the more you understand them, again, you don't have to agree with them, but the more you understand them, the easier it is to have a nice, productive conversation with them, where you both walk away feeling like that was effective. We understand. I know my action items. We're on the same page. And then try to bring a collaborative approach to your conversating. That is a great way to facilitate conversation. And one of the ways you do that is you ask open-ended questions, ask for their thoughts and perspectives, and listen to everyone else's first. You want to avoid leading with your own thoughts or assumptions because you don't want to lead the conversation. This is your opportunity to truly mean it when you say, I want to hear all different perspectives, thoughts, and ideas. So listen fully, acknowledge, prove you understood, heard it. And then after everyone else has shared, thank you for sharing all those thoughts and ideas. Here's some of my own. And you're not saying them first, which could have people go, yes, I agree with you. Or yeah, that sounds good, especially if you're the boss and you lead with your own thoughts, perspectives, and assumptions around things. People might just tend to agree with you. And that doesn't help facilitate good generative conversations that yield new information, new thoughts, ideas, perspectives, and help you get in the know. That always helps you become more strategic in whatever you need to do. And then be real careful about facilitating your thoughts before speaking so that you can, first of all, filter out emotion. Easier said than done. Figure out best way to be clear, figure out best way to be concise, say what you need to say in a very clear and concise manner, and help you become objective. So these are all things that you want to do to help you facilitate good conversations. As I said earlier, if one or more of you is approaching the conversation with a facilitating mindset, it's more likely that the conversation will go well and achieve the outcomes that you're looking for. So as I mentioned, asking curious, open-ended questions is a great way to facilitate conversation. So first of all, curious is a really helpful mindset to be in. Often our thoughts come to us in assumptive form. I'm sure that's what's happening. I know that's why they did that. Okay, that might be the case, but what else could be happening? And it helps you to get curious, right? Well, what else could be the case? And it moves you from maybe your first reaction or emotion, which could be anger, judgment, resentment, humiliation, embarrassment, into, okay, what else could be going on? So that really helps you get in the best mindset before you have a conversation. So these are some of my favorite open-ended generative questions, I call them. They generate good conversations. Simple things like, what ideas do you have? And listen well, acknowledge ideas. When you're strategic planning with a team of people, what can we do to achieve success? What does success look like? Also, one of my favorites is, what's important to you? I like, what are your ideas and what are your perspectives? But sometimes when you say, what's important to you, that yields more information. Might even help them figure out what's important to them, but then you know, and that helps you understand that person better, which is one of the goals. What challenges do you experience, as opposed to, are you having any challenges? Yes, no. What challenges are you experiencing? See the shift? You're saying, I expect you to have challenges. Tell me about them. If you're saying, do you have any challenges? It's almost like saying, I really don't want to hear about them. And so they might be tempted to just say no. You really want them to feel comfortable. So these small shifts make that open-ended question generate more dialogue. When you're communicating with people about the work, when do you feel most enthusiastic and motivated? When you want to understand them better, what excites them about the job? You might think you know, and you might be right, but it's great to ask. Even in action planning, what should be in our action plan? This really helps to generate a collaborative atmosphere. And collaboration is a skill in and of itself. And collaborative conversations usually yield better results than kind of autocratic conversations where I'm just telling you how it is and expecting you to jump on board. Collaborative is, I really want to know how it is for you. And so that we can have kind of a collective group awareness. I like, what do we agree upon too, especially if you're in an argument with someone. You could shift it by saying, okay, let's focus on what types of things do we agree on, or where do we meet in the middle? And that can shift it from going that way to maybe spiraling up. So maybe write down one of your favorites here. And remember to incorporate it into your communications conversation. So then I have what I call speech filters. And these are great, especially for someone like me, but really for all of us. But I'm a pretty emotional person, a reactionary person, probably an overreactionary person. And that all starts up here, how my thoughts are delivered to me about people, about situations and such. So I have needed to learn, first of all, become aware of that that's a challenge for me. And I have created some strategies to help me filter all of those thoughts before I speak or before I type an email. And sometimes I just need a second or two. Sometimes I need a few hours or even a few days to process my thoughts before I'm ready to communicate. It just depends on the situation. So these are some good filters to use. I love the think filter. You may have seen this before, but think before you speak. I love the double entendre there. So first of all, is it true? Is about what you're about to say true, factual? So not just that it's not a lie, but is it factual? You are always late to work. Is that factual? Every single time are they late to work? Um, Say what is true. You've been late to work 10 times in the past month for a total of 4.5 hours. Factual. It's true. So careful about your absolutes. Always, never, all, none, no one, everyone. That is usually not a true statement. So really get factual. Say things that are factual. You'll get less pushback if you're speaking in facts as opposed to those absolutes. Next is what I need to say, want to say, helpful? Is it going to help this situation get better, improve it, start it off? Is about what I'm going to, is what I'm about to say going to help this situation, them, me, us? And is it inspiring? And I like to, you don't have to walk around thinking, how can I say inspirational things all day long? But it's more about, does it inspire someone to action? Does it inspire them to move forward? Does it inspire them to get on board? Does it inspire them to get enthusiastic about something? So does it inspire some sort of action? Is it necessary? Is what I feel like I need to say necessary to say? And I even have an extra filter I add on. It's called the need filter. Does it need to be said? Yes, no. Does it need to be said by me? Yes, no. Does it need to be said by me right now? Usually by the time I get to that one, even if I feel like it needs to be said by me, it doesn't necessarily need to be said by me right now, especially if I'm still feeling reactionary and emotional around it. So that one kind of dials me down. I like it. And then, is it kind? Is it respectful? Is it professional? What do I know about this person? Will they receive it as a kind communication? And I don't mean all butterflies and rainbows, just respectful. So that's a really helpful filter. Then some of these over here, just maybe some questions, some of the similar things, but this is a process. You can kind of see the flow chart of how it works. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? It's probably not ready to come out of your mouth or out your fingers. Do my words need to be filtered? Yes, no. Am I trying to hurt anyone? What's my intention? Is what I'm about to say going to cause a negative reaction? Well, I don't want that. That's going to make things harder for me. Are the words I'm choosing accurate, right? Can I understand how they're feeling? That's your empathy skill. That is a skill. So it's not only putting yourself in their shoes. In fact, I want you to see things from their shoes. How can I see this from their perspective? And it's not, I wouldn't do this if I were them, or how would I react if I were them? How would I feel in their shoes? You want to go further than that. How does it feel to be in their shoes? How can I see this from their shoes? Empathy kind of takes you the further step beyond your own barometer. Well, how would I do this? How would I feel? That's helpful, but it's also besides the point. We really want to understand how they feel. And that you can achieve that by asking really good questions. Did I listen properly? Will my words embarrass someone else? That's a big filter for me, especially in my family. I've got a very sarcastic ex-husband and 3 very sarcastic kids who don't mind saying stuff all the time. I don't. I really am careful about saying something that just might embarrass someone or make them feel bad. So that's a good filter for me. And am I respectful? And then it's your words that either come out your mouth or out your fingers. So write down maybe one of your favorite speech filter questions. Oh, this is my need filter. I put it in a little more depth. Does this need to be communicated? Do my thoughts need filtering? Does this need to be said by me? Does it need to be said by me now? What outcome do I need from this communication? Very important to understand the goal you have for your conversation. What do I need the other person to know? How shall I say it or type it so that I can clearly articulate what I want them to know and not just assume they're going to get it? What need do I have to fill with this communication? Do I need an action? Do I need an adjustment? Do I need better relationship? What need do I have here? And what do I need to do or say to make this communication successful? If at least one of you has an approach like that, it's more likely the conversation will be successful. So if you like any of those additional questions, just write those down. You don't have to ask yourself all of these questions, but start your own filter process. And maybe you have 2 or 3 or 4 questions that you run your thoughts through before you communicate. All right, let's talk about listening. This is your opportunity to learn more about other people, to understand someone else. While you're talking about things you already know or think you know. When you're listening, that's the opportunity to learn more, to understand more about this person, especially if you're frustrated. I don't get this person at all. I don't understand them at all. Get into the mindset of starting a conversation and doing your best job of listening to understand their perspectives, their reactions. If they're overreacting, get curious about that. Why are they overreacting? What just happened? What did I say or do? Or what just occurred that may be causing this? If you get curious about it while you're listening, that's when you learn more information. And it's a choice you make. You choose to be a focused listener. It is my turn to listen, or I want to listen really well so that I can understand this person, this situation, what's happening better than I do now. Sometimes you don't have time to be a focused listener. So if someone says, hey, do you got a minute? I need to chat with you about something. If you don't have time, say so. Now, right now, I have a couple emails I need to get off that are urgent, but can you come back at 2? And I can give you my full attention. So it is your choice to be that focused listener. And then when you do the best job you can at listening. And because in the end, when you have learned about them, understand what they need, understand where they're coming from, understand new things you didn't know about, listening is your chance to learn more what you don't know. I like to walk around thinking, I want to know what I don't know. Tell me more. I'm going to listen well. And then you are able to communicate more effectively with this person and achieve that successful outcome. So often we listen to respond. We are listening for fault or error or disagreement. Or we're listening with enthusiasm and we're thinking about, oh, I'm going to tell him about this, or I'm going to tell him about that. I am waiting for my turn to talk. And if all that's going on in your head while you're listening, air quotes, well, then you're missing all that opportunity to really get them, understand them. So when you choose to listen, you shift your mindset. I want to listen to fully understand this person, what they're saying. So we can really get that valuable information. Sometimes it's helpful to understand and remember that there are levels of listening. And you may think you're at one stage, but you may be at a lower stage, and you really want to get to that full-on empathic listening. So first level is ignoring. I'm really not going to make any effort at all to listen. Pretend listening, giving the appearance of listening. But anything could be going on in your head. To that person, it may look like you're listening because you're not talking, but you're thinking about what you're going to get at the grocery store for dinner, or this challenge, or another problem, but it's not evident. So you pretend listening. Selective listening is hearing only what you agree with or what you're interested in. And so until someone is saying things that you agree with, you're putting on the, imaginary earmuffs, and you don't want to hear what they're saying. I don't want to hear, oh, but that I agree with. Now I'm listening. And I like to listen in particular when someone says, I completely disagree with you, or you're wrong. Now, I move through my reaction because that's not a great way to communicate with someone, for sure. But I try to get curious, like, oh, you disagree, you have a completely different opinion. I want to know it. I am interested in understanding what I don't know. You could be a great attentive listener and focusing on what they're saying and comparing to your own experiences and empathizing and such. But when you're doing that, you're still removing some of the focus of listening to understand this person. So when you engage your empathic listening level, your focus is on understanding this person, their perspectives, their triggers, their emotions, and the subtle aspects of their communication, their nonverbals, their body language. So just remember this scale and try to shoot up to empathic listening. Often what we do instead of listening, and as I go through this list, cop to it, maybe type it in the chat box. Which is your favorite roadblock? What gets in the way of you being able to be a great listener? So it starts with awareness. So type in the chat box as I go through them. Which one do you think you use the most? So we are often preparing our next statement, what we're going to say next. And if you're doing that, you're not listening at that moment. You're thinking about what you're going to say next. And that happens to most of us. So no judgment. Give yourself some grace and refocus on what they're saying. We're often doing other things. We often have our phone out and we're tapping on things and having other conversations or looking at other things. We might be typing an email while we're talking to somebody. We might be doing many other things that take away from our ability to fully effective listen. Sometimes we just interrupt people. Now, interruption, I mean, you cut them off mid-sentence and started talking and hijacked the conversation. Interruption to me is not, may I interrupt you for a minute? I have a question about what you said. Did you mean this or that? Okay, great, thanks. Continue talking. That's clarification. So if you've got a long talker that doesn't take a breath and you can't get it word in edgewise, it's okay in my book to say, may I stop you for a second? I have a question, blah, 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 blah. And then just kind of, get some clarity. But I mean, interrupting, cutting someone off, not hearing what the full everything they needed to say. Sometimes instead of listening well, we move right to negative. What's wrong with what they're saying and why it won't work. Or you get defensive. That's putting up something instead of opening up and saying, okay, wow, that makes me feel defensive, but I want to understand it. Instead say, thanks for bringing that to my attention. Can you tell me more about that? Apparently I finish sentences. So when someone's talking really, really slowly, I want to help them finish their sentences. Maybe they're struggling for a word or just speed up their pace, right? But that is deciding conversation should go at your pace and not letting someone finish their thought. They won't feel heard if you're finishing their sentences or doing the premature agree. I know what you're going to say. Try not to do that. Instead say, I really want to understand what you're trying to say, and at least say that. We discussed body language and nonverbals. If you're an eye roller, all your perfect words and curious mindsets are not going to help. If you're saying proper words, but you're rolling your eyes, that's saying I disagree with you or I dismiss what you're saying. Crossed arms, all of that can be a roadblock to effective listening. And those are tough because you may not be aware of them. Giving advice is okay, especially if you're in a role or a manager that gives advice, but you don't want to start off with that. You want to listen first. Maybe ask them, well, what do you think you should do? Or how do you want to handle that? What do you think best next steps would be? Help them problem solve, right? Then you could say, I have an idea. Would you like to hear it? And then give your advice. I like to say, earn the right to give your advice, related story, reassurance by listening first. So I'm not saying don't give advice, but don't give it right off the bat before they've even shared what's going on or tried to solve the challenge themselves. Reassurance can be kind of condescending. We're going, oh, don't worry about it. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. It'll be fine. But that doesn't really help someone feel heard, work through whatever challenge they are having around it. So listen better. What about this is concerning you? is a better way to handle that. And after that, you could offer some reassurance. Careful of your critiques and judgments. Um, just if that's how you are, if you tend to move to the negative, if you tend to be critical and judgmental, our brains can be hardwired that way. We might want to filter how we want to say things, when we want to say things. Related stories is mine. I'll type that in the chat box. I am so empathetic that I cannot wait to tell you my related story. I get you. I understand it. I had the same thing happen. And I can tell my related story, but I need to earn the right to do that by listening first. So often what I do is interrupt, tell my related story. I usually course correct and say, my bad, I'm sorry. I was telling my related story too soon and I interrupted you. Keep going. And people really appreciate that when they see that course correct. All right. Which one do you use the most? I see several of you have typed in the chat box. All right. This is crucial for you to understand these behaviors. They're very natural. It's just our habit. So you writing down one that you use a lot is really important to remind you to course correct. Here's some tips for listening. Choose to focus on them and the present conversation. As I said, if it's not a good time, say so. Use your words. Don't hint. Don't multitask. Put your devices away. Let me turn my phone to silent and turn it upside down so I can give you my full attention. That helps you disconnect from other things, and it helps people see, oh, they're trying to be real focused on this conversation. One of the best ways to get other people to be good listeners is to model the behavior so they can see what it looks like. And you want to encourage them to talk, be interested. So write that down. Be interested. Probe for more information. Ask questions. Active listening is not just being quiet, it's actively procuring the information, actively being a good listener. And then you want them to know not only are you listening, but you understand them. And that's why we summarize or paraphrase or clarify. Repeat it back in your own words so they can hear it and go, yeah, that's what I mean. You do understand, right? Until that happens, they don't know if you interpreted what they said in the way that they meant it. So it's proving essentially what you heard and proving that you understood. Watch their body language. That is giving you information too beyond their words. And there's my line, earn the right to speak by listening first. All right, so write one of those down. Which one of those resonates with you and you want to remember to do? Hopefully you're starting a nice list of communication habits that you want to start integrating. All right, so now we're going to focus on writing, which is a huge part of how we communicate. So we'll look at all the ways. As I said earlier, you may have a preference, but it doesn't mean you don't need to build skill in all of these areas. So first thing you want to do is know and consider your reader. If you don't know who they are, at least consider them. Are they the CFO of a company? Well, money talks then, maybe budgets and things like that. That's what they'll be more interested. Are they from IT? Are they from human resources? Are they a vendor? Are they a customer? Think about what's important to them. What might they need to get out of this conversation? What do they want? What do they need to know? How do you want them to feel or communicate after reading your communication? That one really helps me. What do I need them to do after I communicate? How do I want them to think about me after this communication, after this email goes? What is their knowledge level or expertise? We don't use the same verbiage for everyone we talk to. That's why I say, are they in finance? Are they in IT? What's their knowledge level? What's their expertise? And we don't necessarily want to talk down to people, but we want to use verbiage that will be clear for this particular audience. Think about what questions they might have. Do they like a lot of detail or just main points? And that's after you get to know someone a while. How might they perceive or misperceive? As I said, walk around expecting to be misperceived and misunderstood. And if you do so, you'll reread that email and say, okay, I don't want them to misperceive that. How can I shift the verbiage so that it clearly gets my point across the way I want it to get across. Next, understand that intention. What outcome do you seek from this communication? Most of us don't do that before we communicate. And not all communication, we talk to people all day long. But when it's any kind of important communication, it deserves some thought around what do I want to achieve here? How am I going to go about it so that I can achieve that outcome and be an effective communicator? And then in the end, achieving the outcome you seek from your communication is what creates communication competence. What do you want them to think? What do you want them to feel? What do you want them to do? Be real clear about that in your own mind before you set out to communicate. And what is your main point? Especially if you're a verbose communicator, you want to rein that in, understand your main point, and help yourself become more concise, because if you use a lot of verbiage to communicate, the receiver gets lost in that, and therefore you may not be as effective. Then think about, to get across your main point and being real clear, have a main point sentence in your email. And a main point sentence can answer the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, and why. So here's a main point sentence that just clearly says everything that needs to be said. Starting Monday, all second shift employees at headquarters should begin and end 30 minutes early to ensure coverage. Who? The second shift employees. So not the first shift, not the third shift. What? They should begin and end 30 minutes early. Where? At the headquarters, so not in the satellite offices. When? This is on Monday. Why? We need to ensure coverage. So at least have some sort of main point sentence that clearly states what you're trying to communicate. And then you can add additional verbiage, but that's clear. So let's talk about being concise. I think no matter what, most of us appreciate concise communication. Not too concise, that can move over into terse or almost rude. So concise language means using the minimal amount of effective words to make the point. And then to wordsmith it, I called, or, revise and look over your verbiage, challenge every word. Do you need it? And after a while, it starts to become more natural to you. So here's an example. To be concise, it is helpful to delete words that don't add anything to your message or sentence. A fine sentence, but it is not concise. There's lots of words in there we didn't need to get our point across. Omit unnecessary words. So I used 3 words to say what I needed to say instead of whatever that is, 12 words. So I've been saying this through class quite a bit. Expect people to misunderstand and misperceive you. I think the statistic is people retain about 60% of what they hear and or read. I think the percentage goes up when they read it because it can be reread, right? And if I don't get something at first, I can read it over and over again, and it might start to become more clear or things more. But when something is just verbally said, we only have that one time to catch it. So it's kind of difficult for people to remember every single thing that was said and points that were made and things that need to be done. So they may misremember, they may misunderstand, and you don't want to get frustrated about that. You want to check yourself. How can I make sure to be as clear as possible? How can I make sure that they heard and received the information in the way I intended and the way I need it to be? So if you expect people to misunderstand, you make greater effort to make sure that there is clarity. So let's look at how we could do that. These are clarity tips. In the end, if your communication doesn't achieve clarity, it wasn't a competent communication. You weren't approaching that with full agility and skill sets. The whole goal is to achieve clarity, that both or all are on the same page. And we don't just hope we're on the same page or assume we're on the same page. We prove it. We prove a clarity was achieved. So write, talk, communicate in a way that avoids misinterpretation. And that means doing most of the things we have learned about already in this session. Understand the rules of grammar, which is easy, much easier now. There's so many tools and the spell check and the grammar and the punctuation. We all have it. It's annoying. And sometimes I get really frustrated by it. I'm going to turn that off. But you know what? It alerts me to things I've misspelled. It alerts me to how I may have structured a sentence that doesn't make sense or didn't use appropriate grammar. And so if you're not good at that, we have lots of tools that can help us. And it helps you learn, and it also helps you check your communication. So back in the day, I was learning all this, 20, 30 years ago, we didn't have any of these things to assist us. Really helps me to read aloud what I just typed out or what I texted. And I find emails much easier for me. I'm much better on a keyboard than I am on that text on my phone. And I use an absolute, but I'll say I almost always make mistakes in my text message, much less in my email. So whenever I can, I come to my computer so I can write on my computer as opposed to on text. So reading it aloud to myself, or actually aloud, not to myself. So I hear the words really helps me see if it makes sense. Try to, if there's any kind of abstract thoughts, theories, such, nail down some details so you kind of bring it down to some specifics. Watch your jargon or your acronyms. Like if you say, hey, get this to me, can you get this to me ASAP? Well, we all know that means as soon as possible, but what does that mean? ASAP. In fact, type in the chat box right now. When someone says, get this to me ASAP, what do you do? How do you react? What do you think that means? I'm very curious to see how we receive that particular acronym differently. When someone says that, what do you do? What is your action? What do you think? Okay. Yesterday, says Robert, stop everything and get it to them. Quickly get it to the person. So what if as soon as possible for you, given your workload, is 3 days from now? That's as soon as possible for you. Does it mean, and when you say ASAP to someone, do you actually mean, I want you to stop whatever you are doing and work on this? Often that isn't what we mean, but we want to say, to avoid any or any confusion, simply say, I need this for my report by 5 o'clock tomorrow. Can you get this to me by 2? Does that work in your schedule? I mean, at least get clarification. If you just say, get it to me ASAP, we most likely have a different approach to what that's going to be. And we've left it nebulous. We do not know. And the receiver does not know what you mean by that. So if they know your timetable and you were professional and respectful to say, can you get this to me by then? Does that work given your workload? And that communicate with a clear agreement on when they're going to get it to you, and not just hope and pray that they understood what you meant by the acronym ASAP. If you say, all right, everyone, I want you to hit it out of the ballpark today. All right, what does that mean? And if someone doesn't know baseball, right, what does that even mean? Is that bad? When you hit it out of the ballpark, isn't that bad? No, that might mean a home run. Well, what if it's a foul ball? What do you mean by that? So instead of saying that, say, I want everyone to hit 10 calls by noon today. That would be amazing, right? So get specific. Watch your jargon. Watch your acronyms. Not everyone understands all the acronyms, especially in the work that we do. So many, even units in your own agency have many different acronyms. So spell out those acronyms. Clarify verbiage that can have multiple meanings or interpretations. Summarize what is being said. Okay, let's sum up what we discussed. You're going to do this. I'm going to do that. We have a deadline of 5 o'clock. This action has to happen. I'm going to call such and such. Are we all on the same page? That's what we're trying to do when we summarize. I feel like most any important conversation shouldn't end without a sum up of what was discussed, because then we have that additional chance for the information to be retained. Uh, and this happens verbally, especially it's helpful verbally, and especially in addition as you're writing, making sure people are interpreting your emails and your texts accurately. So you can still summarize an email chain. You can still summarize an IM or a text chain. And then edit with focus on universal clarity. This makes sense to me. Well, we really want it to make sense to everyone else. So how can I say this? How can I write this? So I'm pretty sure it will make sense to everybody who needs to read this. So maybe write down one of those clarity tips that you want to start focusing on and remember to integrate into your habits. So again, around clarity, here are some examples. Facilitate the process. What exactly do you want me to do when you say facilitate the process? Well, I want you to make it easier for this unit to use our process. Get that to, I already talked about the ASAP. Say exactly what time frame you need so that they know if it's 4 o'clock tomorrow, well, then they don't have to drop everything right now to get that. They can work on that later. They can work on it in the morning. Be mindful of other people's schedules, right? Oh, and I guess I already talked about these. How about this one? We need green paper. We need paper that is sustainably made. That needed more words. I had read an example in a workbook I was in a class I was in. Someone ordered the color green paper, and what they really wanted was ecologically sound paper. So really strive for clarity and reread things to make sure they make universal sense. And then something I've kind of been touching upon is that when you're summarizing, it gives you the opportunity to create shared agreements. If we just say, do this, get this to me ASAP, we didn't really get an agreement. We didn't really say, does that work for your workload? Can you do that? Yes. Or they might be able to say, I can't, but I can get it to you by 4. Okay, that's our agreement. And now we're both aware of what that agreement is. So strive to create those shared agreements, not just what you want, but that what they can do, and you are on the same page. What that does is create accountability, because they said, yes, I can get that to you by 4. And then if they don't, you can say, hey, what happened? What got in the way of you being able to do what you said you were going to be able to do? If you just say, get that to me as soon as possible, there was no commitment about when that was going to happen. So it's harder than to, I said, get it to me ASAP. I'm like, well, I will. I'm getting it to you tomorrow because given my workload, right? It's harder to hold people accountable when we don't take that extra step to create a shared agreements. This works in your personal life too, with kids and significant others and such, making sure you're on the same page before we end the conversation. Are there any action items anyone needs to do? Let's create shared agreements about those action items. Even though you just talked about them, and you might say, I assume they heard that. I assume they retained that. I want you to assume they did not. Not approach this in a condescending manner. So I assume you didn't listen to me. I don't want to do that. Saying, okay, we talked about a lot. Let's sum up what we discussed and what our action items are. So that's not insulting anyone. That is just seeking shared agreements and clarity. So we summarize decisions and action items, so we're all on the same page in agreement. If it's really important and you want to make sure it was retained, follow up then. Send an email summary of decisions and action items. It's so helpful to have things in writing. And that way, even if you summarized, people might walk away forgetting some of those things. That follow-up written document really helps. It also helps accountability. You have a time, date stamped message. And so if someone says, you never said that to me, it's in this email that I have. So Um, that's something that helps if you find yourself in a scenario where people or certain people are misunderstanding you or misremembering things or forgetting to do things. That's a helpful communication tip. And then you might want to check in to ensure accountability and become aware of any changes. Hey, so how's that coming along? Are you still able to meet that 4 o'clock deadline? Is there anything I can do to help? They might say, oh, no, I just got this new task from our boss. So that's going to create a problem for me getting this to you. Well, it's good that you knew about that ahead of time and that you two can make a new plan that's going to work. So that's what I call shared agreements. All right, quick class, lots of stuff. I'd love it if you write in the chat box some of your favorite key takeaways, something you wrote down on your action item, something that resonated that you want to continue to remember and integrate into your habits. Also, happy to answer any questions here. So you can type that in the chat box. I'm not sure if you can unmute or not, but I'm happy to have you do that as well.
All right. Thank you, Wendy.
Mhm.
Yes, we don't have participants on mute, but you are more than welcome to put that into the chat if you have any questions and also something that you learned from today's webinar. Um, I actually have a quick question for you, Wendy. So it seems to me from what you've said that like a lot of good communication skills are tailored to communicating with an individual person, kind of understanding their perspective, reading like physical signs. Does any of this advice change if you're communicating with a group?
Well, yeah, you still want to pay attention to body. So if you let's envision we're in a meeting with 10 people in a room together and or on virtual with videos on, because you can't see all that. So yeah, you still want to be able to pay attention to people's body language. It's quite a lot of information coming at you. Uh, we still want to go around the room and say, what is your perspective? What is your perspective? What is your perspective? Give everyone a chance to communicate. It is likely in a group setting, you're going to have introverts who like to think things through before they communicate, and maybe extroverted thinkers who like to think out loud. So if you ask them a question, they're going to have several answers and they quickly be able to verbalize it. So knowing your audience, you know that some people are not comfortable or they're not speaking up. So what can you do to help them feel comfortable speaking up? Maybe give them a turn, a couple of minutes uninterrupted. Have someone time people as we do a round robin. Maybe if it's a collaboration and you want to ask a bunch of questions, send the questions out, the agenda out of what you're going to be talking about ahead of time so that people can be ready and feel more comfortable communicating. So there are things to think about when you're communicating to a group. I'm going to have all types in here. I'm going to have some people who are very comfortable speaking in front of others. I'm going to have people who are not comfortable speaking in front of others. No judgment, but we all do need to get more comfortable and better at all of those skills. So create an environment for all different personality types to feel comfortable communicating. Yes, it's a bit easier when you're only communicating with one person, but in a group, you want to even have all of this a bit more heightened and you're aware of all of the personality types that will be in that group. Good question, Mackenzie.
Okay, awesome. Ramil asked, is it possible to get to the link to recording? Yes, if you signed up for the webinar through Eventbrite, we will be sending that out soon after this is over. If for whatever reason you don't get the email, it will also be posted on our website, www.csdpool.org. There's a webinar tab. You should be able to find it. If not, just email us. We can send it to you. Um, Madison said, I love the statement, earn the right to give your advice by listening first. That's a
Yeah.
good one.
It helps you stay in listening mode. I say it to myself all the time.
Yes. My take is always include, be concise, reiterate understanding and shared agreements. I will listen to this recording again. Thank you.
Awesome.
Um, Meaningful
Excellent.
learning will help a lot in day-to-day activities to improve communications. I agree with that. All right.
Well,
I,
thank you, everyone. Appreciate those takeaways. It's always helpful for me to know what resonated with you. You're welcome, everyone.
yes. And I'm not seeing any more questions. So without further ado, I think we'll wrap up for today. Thank you everyone for joining us this Tuesday morning. Wendy, thank you so much. It was a great webinar. And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, awesome. Have a good day, everyone.
Take care, everybody. Thanks.